All right. So for today's class, we're gonna look at functions and error handling as a continuation of what we did in our previous class. And we already know the drill. The idea of moving from slide to code, slide to code is that when we do that, we tend to lose focus. So as usual, we'll just go straight to our code editor and then we just stay there and then we do what we write our code. And then if there is need for any theory or any note, I'll still put it down in the VS Code itself. Okay, so that way we don't need to switch between our VS Code and our slide. Okay, so for this particular class, if you guys have noticed, I'm actually on a Windows system and I just installed Python on this device. And for this class, I'll be using the pre-installed Python code because I'm not even aware that when you install Python, there's a code editor that comes alongside with Python. Now, it's a very simple editor and nothing really much about it, but I'll be using it for this particular class. Okay, we will likely not use it again. Please, if you are still on VS Code, please continue with the VS Code, right? So this is just for this particular class. For this particular, right? So please, let's not switch, right? So if you're comfortable with VS Code, please stay on VS Code. If you intend to try out this new editor, okay, you can try that out if you want to. Okay, so I'll just simply switch my screen sharing to that particular editor so we see how it looks like. We work with that. Okay, so let's just do that real quick. We go to screen share and I'll just simply just switch this to code editor. So I believe that code how the editor looks like. So let me expand on it. I believe you guys can see this editor, right? Please, I want to be sure that you guys are seeing this editor. Or is it just me?
I can see the editor.
All right. All right. So this is the built-in Python code editor. So it comes alongside your Python installation. So if you go to your start menu, you will see this editor there. Okay. So you can use it. I can still continue with your VS Code. Um so to use this editor, once you open this editor for the first time, you would see this fantastic window, very simple and very straightforward. And you don't want to write your code in this particular window because this window works as your terminal. It means that if you write your Python instruction here and then you put in say hello, the moment you click on enter, it automatically executes this code, right? And we do not want that, right? We do not want that. So to fix that problem, you simply want to create a new file. So you can create a new file there, and then you just choose wherever you want to save that file. So I believe you guys can still see that pop-up menu that came up. So this is where we want to write our actual code. And this editor is actually nice for beginners as like it doesn't come with those wonderful autocomplete. So basically, you need to write out your code as it is. So there is no autocomplete, no correction, no autocorrect, and other stuff. So as you type exactly, it stays exactly like that. All right. So if you're not comfortable with this editor, please you can switch to your you can switch to your VS Code here. But for this class, I will use this particular editor. So let's look at function, right? Let's look at function. So function in Python, function in Python. So what exactly is function? What exactly is function? So before this class, we've used multiple functions. So if you remember, in our first class, I talked about some built-in function, such those functions such as the print function, the input function, the typecasting function, and so on and so forth. Right. So those are built-in functions that came alongside your Python installation. And functions are basically what they are basically a group of instructions that work together to do what to accomplish a particular task. That's basically what a function is. It's just a group of your source code, right? So it groups your source code, right, and helps you do what that to achieve a particular task. Now, the whole point of using a function is that you could use it for reusability. So code reusability. Okay, so that's the core purpose of using a function, right? So if you have a source code, right, where that source code will only execute one time and you will never use it again in your entire source code, then you don't have need for what for functions. Okay, but then if at all that particular source code would be used in multiple places, then function would help you in a very long way, right, in a very long run, right? So functions are greatly important concepts, and we cannot neglect it. Okay, we cannot neglect it. So let me just put down this for the purpose of note taking. All right, functions are basically functions are basically uh, uh, a collection a collection of reusable. The key word there is reusable, right? Of reusable code, a collection of reusable code to accomplish a particular task. So that's basically what a function is, right? So the main point here is what is a reusable what code, right? So that's just the main purpose of function, to group your source code such that you can do what you can reuse it, right? So the source code can do what can basically be aimed at achieving one particular task, right? But at some point, or should I say in reality, or in most cases, or should I say in few cases rather, the function may likely not solve any tasks, right? But then it may just help you bundle your code and then you do what you reuse it. So the main point is what is the code reusability. That's the whole purpose of function, right? So it bundles your code and then you do what you reuse it anywhere in your source code. So that's just the whole purpose of function. So let's put down a very simple Python script, yeah, and then we do what we introduce function into that script, and then from there we could see the whole benefit of what of function and how they work and how they behave and how we can use them, right? So please, are we together? Are we together? Please, I want to believe that we are together. That we are together. I want to believe that we are
Yeah,
together.
I'm not seeing the screen. I don't know whether others
You're not
are.
seeing.
I'm not seeing the screen too.
You're not seeing. What is going on? Okay, please hold on. Let me just hold on. Okay, let's see. Are you guys seeing now? Are you guys seeing the screen now?
Yes.
All right. But please, sorry about that. For some reason, I think that screen share did not capture that new file that I created. So how did I actually arrive in this particular screen? So I simply just created a new file, right? So this is that new file. That new file gives you a blank a blank sheet like this, right? So that is basically what happened or how we arrived at this particular screen. So if you open this editor for the first time, you would see that previous screen that you guys was seeing, right? And then once you create a new file, then you now have a blank sheet like this. So basically, you want to write your script in this blank sheet, not in the other screen. The other screen is execute your code immediately. You do what you click on enter, and we don't want to write our source code there, right? So that's how we arrived here. Okay, so let's put down some basic code, and let's see how this will do, how this will work. Okay, so let's assume that we have a source or let's say a script that basically that basically takes your name, right, yeah, and then should I say welcome you to this call, right? That's basically the script that we intend to write. So the script will do what will take your name and then welcome you to the call. So it could be good evening. Let's say your name is Ngozi, right? So we could say good evening, Ngozi, yeah? And then we now say welcome to this class, and then we now say welcome to CodeCamp 6.0, right? And so on and so forth. So let's just put that script down and let's see how that will do how that will play out for us. So first of all, I'll get the name as usual, right? And then well, since name is not a numerical value, we already know that what that we cannot typecast name, right? Or we cannot typecast alphanumerical what value, right? So I'll leave it as it is. So input, and then we want to go ahead and just says enter. Sorry, your name. So by now you're already seeing that I need to manually open and close all my brackets and my quotation. That just the let's say the limitation of this particular idea, right? So you have to do everything manually on your own. And for some reason, it is most recommended for beginners. But for me, in my own opinion, I would say it doesn't really matter. Okay, it doesn't really matter. But if you want to, to take everything step by step, bit by bit, then I will recommend this particular code editor. But then I will always give my recommendation to VS Code. Okay, so enter your name, and then I will just simply say print. Here I will just say welcome. Say good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Who? The name, right? And then I will just simply say print again. Here I will simply just say I will simply just come here and I would say, welcome to CodeCamp 6.0. Maybe, okay. And maybe I would also add another print here. I would just simply say, welcome to this particular class. Welcome to Monday classes, to Monday class. Just giving instances, right? I'm just trying to come up with some illustration. All right, so that's a very simple basic code, and if I should execute this, of course, this would also, if I should run this, so there's with this editor, there's a run option there. So you click on that, you just simply just click on this run module. That's how this that's how this code editor will compile and execute your Python script, right? So just click on that, and that will execute your source code. So if I should do that, that will ask me to save, right? So because by default this file is not saved, so you have to each time you make a correction on this file, you need to manually save it. That is just one thing about this particular editor is just it's just that how it behaves. So please just bear with me. All right, so I'll just simply click on save and you give it a name. So there's a pop-up that comes up, and then you do what you select the location of wherever you want to save this. And for some reason, I've been trying to see how I can share my entire screen, but it's not working for some reason. Okay, I don't know. It worked before, but it's just not working. Just give me a few minutes. Let me see if I can get my entire screen to share. It's not still coming up. I don't know. Tried everything to make sure this man works. All right, so please, you guys just have to please just bear with me for this particular class. All right, so this pops up, right, and then you simply just choose your location. So if you're still on your machine, you want to navigate to where you have your Python folders, and then you do what you put that files there. So in this case, I just go to my desktop here, and I just call this class. I'll call this class 4. I believe, and this should be our class 4, right? And then I just simply do a save. And then what happened is that you see your code execute. I don't know if that execution screen has been captured, but let me confirm. Please, you guys believe that to bear with me this particular class is hard to get on one device to get this up and running. All right. So this is the execution screen. I really need to. All right. So this is the execution screen. So this is where it executes. So by default, it goes back to that first screen that you guys saw and execute there. So it will not execute inside that same file. It will take you back to that previous screen and execute there, right? So here I could just simply come in and type in the Ngozi here, right? Ngozi, and click on enter, and then you can see that what that basically executed, right? So we have good evening, Ngozi, and then welcome to CodeCamp 6.0, and then welcome to that should be Monday, not Monday. So that's code editor works. Okay. So now let's go back to our source code and see how function can come in here and make our life even more easier, or we could probably as a whole. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at another instance. So that is a very simple concept which believe that we are already familiar with that with such little concept. So let's go back and then let's relook our code again. Okay, so coming back to our source code, right? So everything looks fine and everything looks wonderful. Now, if this was the case, this would not be an issue, right? But in situation where we need to repeat a certain source code over and and over again, then that would be a problem. So what do I mean? Let's assume that that at some point in our source code, I have another instruction, or should I say, I have another set of instruction, and where from random source code here, right? There is no specific tax that was that random instructions. Okay, so the value of 5, and then I have another I simply got to have a result here, result x plus y, right? And everything works fantastic. But then let's say along the line, I intend to repeat this source code again. These two lines that says print welcome to CodeCamp 6.0 and welcome to Monday class, right? So this should be Monday. So let's assume that I intend to repeat this instruction again at some way along the line, right? So what would I actually do? What I would do is I would simply just come back to that source code, right? And do what and copy that source code all over again, yeah, and then do what bring it down here, and then do a paste it there. That would be the case. And then maybe I could have some other code as well, right? I could have some other existing source code, right? So I could just simply come down here. Maybe I can have another source code that maybe collects your age around. So here I could just simply say input, and then I will just simply say enter 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 your age. And here I want to simply say when I get your age, I want to simply just say your final age at this point. At this point should be equal to let's say age, and then I just multiply it by your age. So multiplication is this, and then call it by this. So I just times it together, right? And then print out this man again, final age. So these are just random source codes. Like I said, and then there's no tax in mind to do what to solve. So the whole point is what is making you see what's code repetition. So let's see after this now, right? After this particular source code there, I intend to do what to copy that same source code again, right? And maybe I still need to use that same source code again after that instruction. So what do I do again? I'll simply copy this man again and do what and just bring it down there, right? And just bring it down and replace it that there. And then I'll keep doing that over and over and over. And as far as I still see need for this particular set of instructions. So it means that each time I need that instruction, what do? I simply just go and copy the whole instruction and do what and replace or and put it wherever what I want it. And so on and so forth, right? And then I'll keep doing that and doing that and do that as far as I still see need for that particular instruction, right? So do we understand up to that point before we execute this code and see what happens? Do we understand up to that point before we execute this code and see what happens? Do we understand up to that point? Do we understand up to that point? Okay. All right. So the thumbs up means that we are following. All right. So now let's execute this code. Okay. So I'll simply just reshare again, so you guys can see that screen that shows the results. So let me just bring that here again. Sorry, but just have to be switching screen there and there. All right, so let me just run this code one more time. So it shows up here. All right, so I'll execute this code. And remember, because this editor works in that each time you do what you make changes, you have to manually do what save it. So that's just some key information about this particular code editor. Okay, so all right. So once we execute this code, you can see that what happens, it brings up back here again, right? It brings up back here again, and then here I could just type in and then just say Benjamin or maybe Ben, right? And then what happens is that this executed, right? This also executed here again, and then I could type in my age. Let's say I could type in age of 100, And you can see that that executed here again, right? But the whole concept is what we had to repeat this code here, and repeat this code here, right? Now it looks very interesting, but it looks very, very okay because what? Because those instructions is just what? Is just two lines of instructions. Now let's assume that the instruction that we intend to do was to copy and keep replacing is about 1,000 lines of code. Now what does that tells us that this particular place would be filled up with 1,000 lines of code, and then here again would be filled with another 1,000 lines of code, and here again would fill again with another 1,000 lines of code, and then before you know it, your code gets messy. You're having the same code over and over and over again in separate places, right? So that is where function now comes in and help you do what? Group this instruction into into a small package, and you can simply reuse it over and over again without doing what? Without necessarily copying the source code and doing what? And pasting it over and over and over and over again. That is just the whole purpose of function. Okay, so let's go back and let's see how that works in the actual program itself. Let's go and see how you can create this function and do what? And prevent repetition of source code. So let's go and see that. So as usual, again, I have to reshare my screen again, so we can just switch to the other screen again. I don't know what's going on today, but this man doesn't just want to capture the entire screen. Please just bear with me for this particular class. Okay, so let me just reshare again, and let's take us back to our source code. Okay, so I believe that is that. All right, so we are back to our source code, right? So this is our source code here. Basically, what we are seeing here, what is repetition? Code repetition here, code repetition here, right? And this looks small, or this looks should I say this look less scary just because what the code itself is just two lines of code. So I want you guys to look at that two lines of code as 1,000 lines of code. So you can imagine having 1,000 lines of code there, right? And then another one here, and then another 1,000 here. So it means that you have the same code, 3,000 lines for just nothing. That is, you just wasted 3,000 lines of code doing the same thing, right? So that is where function comes in and help you do what? Solve these kind of situations, right? So how do we create, or how do we use, or how do we create, or how do we implement function? All right. So to implement function, or should I say to create function, because we are already familiar with the built-in functions like the print. So how do we create our own function, our own custom-made function? So to create function in Python, we do what? We use a special keyword called def, right? If you guys can see that def, I wish I can zoom this thing in because this thing is looking small. Let me see if this editor has a way of zooming this man. Just hold on a bit. Let me see. So because I'm feeling it in my bone that this stuff is looking smaller in you guys' side. I'm just feeling it on behalf of all of us. So just give me a few minutes. Let me see if I can zoom that in. Options. I believe they should zoom this man. Okay, that wasn't the case. Just hold on a bit, but let's see. So edit. Let's see. Zoom. Did they zoom somewhere? Oh, this editor is the worst. Yeah, the language is perfect, but the editor itself is terrible, right? It's terrible. We will not use it again after the class. We will never use it again, ever. All right. They used to be. Just hold on, please. I'm sure that they used to be. Can't just remember where it is. Let's see. I'm not sure. That is the case. Let's see. Let's see. Mm, okay, so I think that is big enough. Yeah. Please confirm that is big enough. That you guys are okay with that font. All right. So thumbs up there means that yeah, it's good to go. Okay. So let's go back and continue. Please just bear with me for this particular class. Yeah. I will not use this man again ever. All right, so this is the special keyword that we use in creating functions. So this is the keyword that when Python sees that keyword, it knows that you want to create a function, and what a basically what a collection of basically what a container that should contain what your source code, and then this source code can be reused over and over and over again without necessarily repeating that source code over and over and over again. So once Python sees this man def, what does it expect? It expects what the function name, right? So the same way we have input as function name and print as function name, Python also expects that you give your own custom function a name, right? So in this case, I can call this function greeting. Yeah, greeting. You can call it anything, right? So I'll just put it as function name or as a variable name, right? But let's leave it as function name. So this will follow by what? By function name, right? So after giving this man a name, Python expect that this name should follow by what? By open and close parentheses, right? And then after that, followed by what? By colon. And that is how you define your function. Now, once Python sees this, once Python sees this, the def, and then he expect the function name. How do I reference this function, or how do we call this function? So you give it that name, and then followed by what? Followed by parentheses. So open and close parentheses, yeah? And then after that, followed by what? Your colon. And then after that, everything that stays indented becomes what? Becomes the function body, right? It becomes the function body. So here becomes what? Your function body, right? And of course, the function body can be much. It can be so your function body is being determined by what? By the length of your source code, right? So if your source code is 1,000 line of code, then of course your function body will be long as 1,000 line of code. So this can go as long as possible. So that's basically how function is being created. That's basically how function is being created. Okay. So having this in mind, let's comment on this. Okay. So not support controls do this one after the other. God. This button editor. Let's go ahead and let's continue. So let's go ahead and create our own function, right? So of course, you want to create your own custom function. So as such, the parentheses and then what the colon, followed by what your function body. So as far as you define your function, you must give it a body. Okay. So here I'll be I'll call this greetings, right? Greetings, and then followed by what? My parentheses, open and close, followed by what? Colon, right? And then my function body will simply be this man. So I'll cut this man here, and then simply do what? Give it here as my function body. Please remember, in order to identify that this source code belongs to your function body, it needs to stay what? Indented. So right now, this is the only function body, right? That's the only function body. So we have to include this man as a function body. So you do what? Simply tap this man in, so that now becomes what? Part of that function. And let's take this out, all this repeated code out. Okay, code as it is without that code repetition. So let's go ahead and let's see what happens. Okay, so I would run this. So for each time you want to run, you must save your source code as it's very terrible. And then what happens? It takes you back to that other screen. So let me just switch back again to that other screen so we can see. God. All right, so let's switch it back to that other screen. All right, please just bear with me, guys. Promise you guys, after this class, we'll never come back to this editor ever. All right, so I believe we have it here, and it's showing at the bottom. Let me see if I can close this up. Let me close this and let me bring this again. So let's close this and let me bring it back up again, because that other guy is showing at the bottom, which may be difficult for us to see, right? So let's run this again. And okay, so that's showing. Please, guys, sincerely. Okay, so now this is our output, right? This is where we have our code execution. So now if I type in Ngozi again, okay, what happens is that everything works, right? Everything works, but you can see that what that our greeting source code never got executed, right? The welcome to CodeCamp 6.0 and welcome to Monday's class was never executed, right? Now, but then we have that source code, but it did not execute. Why? That's because of how functions behave. That's how function behave. So now, what you should know about function is that once you create a function, it never fires on its own. So basically, once a function is being created, that function can never execute on its own, except you manually invoke or execute it on your own. So that is why if you go back to our source code and see what happens, if you go back to our source code and see what happens there, then you will see that our source code carries that function here, but then that function never executed. So if you look at our source code here, we have that function here, right? But when we executed this file, this set of code, right? This set of code did not do what? Did not execute. That's because of that. That is how function behave. So function works in two ways, right? So the first way is what is a function creation. The function creation, which is basically what we've just done there, and the other way is what is the function invocation or function calling. So let me just put that down. So for the purpose of notes taking, so we have the function creation or function creation, or we could call it initialization. Okay, and we also have what the function invocation. All right, so this is where you or calling. I don't know call it. So this is where this second phase. This second phase is where you manually now call the function. So and where you call it, that is where that source code was will execute, right? That is the last phase of what of function, right? So the first phase what is function creation, and then the second phase what is function invocation. So we are done with the first phase, which is what we've created our function. Now it's time to use the function, because by default, if you don't use it, it never executes, right? It's almost similar to comment, but the difference is that Python is fully aware of that function, but it doesn't just choose to do what to execute it for you, right? So it's a way that function exists. So it's left for you as the developer to do what to now manually say, okay, this is where I want this function to what to execute. So that having that in mind, so we can do what we can simply just go back and do what and invoke our function. And you'll be wondering, how do we invoke this function? So it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. To invoke your function, you simply do what you simply call it by the function name. Call it by the function underscore name, and then follow by your parentheses. Right? That's basically how Python, how function invocation works. It's just that simple. So the function name followed by by your brackets. Okay, so let's go back and let's comment on this out for now, and let's go back and let's use it. So we want to use this source code where, remember, it was here. So we simply come here now and do what and call this man called greetings. Okay, and then our parentheses. So and then we also wanted to use this man here again. So it's come here and do one say greetings again. I think the greeting comes with S, and then finally you do what we use it down there again, greetings. Okay, with S, and then open and close parentheses. So it's that simple, right? It's that simple. Now, if I execute this code, what happens? Then our source code here will do what? Will simply execute where we invoked again, and then where we finally invoked again, right? So that way, what happens? We've used that source code without manually doing copying and pasting that source code over and over again. Okay, so now let's go back and let's run our code as usual. Once I click on run, I have to do what I have to save. Okay, so click on my save, and this will take me back to the run page. Okay, so I'll simply just switch so we can see the execution terminal. So going back to our execution terminal, okay, so we have it here. All right, so we have our source code there. So it's there. So if I should now type in Ngozi again, right? Ngozi again, what happens? And I have welcome to KodeCamp 6.0. Welcome to KodeCamp 6.0 again, and then I type in age of 100, and I have and I have welcome to KodeCamp 6.0 down there again, right? So that is basically how function work, or should I say the duty or the importance of function. Now it looks not too meaningful, because we just when you have a longer line of source code points, right? So you simply group it, and you simply group it with the help of function, and do what, and simply invoke it at wherever point in your source code that you want to do what reference that particular set of instructions. Do we understand? Do we follow up to that point? Do we understand? Do we understand? All right. Thumbs up there means that we understand, but that was for Mr. Benjamin. Uh, I believe we all understand. Please, if there's question, this is the moment where you have to do what ask. So before we proceed, right? So I've seen another thumbs up there. Okay. All right. Any question from any other person? All right. So three people have showed thumbs up. So it means that we all understood up to that point. So that's fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. So let's go back and let's continue. All right. So let's switch back to our source code into our source code again, and let's discover more things that function can do for us. So I'll go back again and just switch back to our source code. Please, for those of us that are joining just now, please, we are using the built-in, okay, or should I say the pre-installed editor that Python gave to us. And trust me, I tell you that it's not going well. The editor is not going well at all. It's I don't even know, but it's terrible. All right, so let me just put this man up there so we can have some space to type. Because for some reason, this editor it just keeps coming down and doesn't go up. So I have to manually and put space so we can have room to the upside that we can keep typing our code. All right. So now we are now looking at our function, and we've basically seen how function is being created and how it's being used. Remember, there are two phases, right? So if you create it and just expect Python to use it, then it's not execute. So you have to manually tell Python, this is where I want you to execute that function here, 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 and there, right? So if you don't do that, then your function will only live within your source code, and nothing will do what will happen, right? Nothing will do what will happen. All right. So apart from just grouping things, our function can do other things. So other things like collecting values. So that then takes us to what to function parameters. Function parameters. So function parameters. All right. So what exactly is function parameters? What exactly is function parameters? So these are basically ways of sending value into your function, right? These are basically ways of sending values into your function, because by default, your function is supposed to do what to execute and terminate within itself. So it doesn't take in something and it doesn't send out something. That's just how function should behave, right? But with the parameters, we can know what we can alter that behavior. So we can choose to tell Python, I want this function to do what to take this parameter. So it's almost similar to what to our print function, right? So our print function does what takes in this parameter of result and simply do what and simply behind the print source code or the print function source code, it simply means take that parameter and do what and display it, right? So same thing can happen to our function, because right now our function cannot take anything, right? It just simply does greet, right? So let's assume that we have let's assume again, right? That we have a source code, right? Where that source code basically carry out some instructions, right? But then that instruction can be used for multiple values. So what I want to do now is that I want to clean our source code here, right? And then just bring in another source code so that we can better use that source code and do what and implement other sorry and explain this particular concept of parameters. So I'll just comment on this ones instead of cleaning it. But to comment on it, I have to comment line after another, which is difficult. All right, so let's just leave that man up there, right? Let's just create another function. So I'll call this function the function of I'll call this function calculation function, right? Calculation, right? So let's assume that we have a source code. Or probably before this function, let's just assume that there was no function in the picture, right? And then we have some variables. Say I'll call this num1, that basically takes in a number, right? And this number I'll just call it sorry, it should be input. And this number I'll just simply also enter num1. Oh god. I can also do copy and paste. Oh god. This editor is something else. All right, so let's paste that here manually, and then just do num2. Here I would say enter the variable for what, for num2, and then here I would simply just say that in this same instruction here, that I basically want to do what, I basically want to carry out a print of what, a print of I want to print what, the sum of num1 plus num2, right? And then if I should execute this, of course, it will start from the. Please let me just comment on this, man. Please give me a few minutes. Let me comment on this, man. Right? Let's comment on this, because if I don't comment on this, then it will end up starting from afresh, and we may likely get confused. So to clear the confusion, let me just comment on this out for now, right? So we don't get lost in between. All right. So I think that is only where we have. Okay. So we comment on name, comment on this man, comment on this other man. All right. Please do not use this code editor if you're on a timeline. If you have a project that needs to be accomplished in few days, please, I do not use it. Do not even try it. Right? You would it will take you almost 1 week to comment out one line of code. All right, so let's proceed. Let's proceed. So I want to do what I want to simply execute this code, right? And then I want to it takes us down again. So let me just close this again, and let me just bring this again up. All right, so run this again. Switch this to our execution panel so we see. All right, let's switch this to execution panel. Please hold on a bit. Okay. So this is our execution page. Okay, so that we have our input for what, for num1 and num2. So here I can enter 40, I can enter let's say 100. Okay, and then I have what, I have 140, right? And that makes sense if that was just the only instruction, right? But now let's go ahead and add other instruction that can carry out some other calculation, like multiplication and so on and so forth. And then we come back and then we explain the whole importance of what, of parameters in functions. Okay, so let's go back again and let's continue. All right, so that was just to make sure that that code is executing just fine. So we see what is happening there. All right, so I'll go back to our source code again. Let's proceed. Okay, all right, so now let's also assume that we intend to do what, to use the same number again. Okay, let's say this same number again, and then carry out for hold on, let's see.
Excuse me, sir.
Can anybody hear me? Yes, I can hear you, but it's not saying anything. Oh. Hello, are you guys there? No, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we are here.
Okay. Guess the network is from his end.
Is it still here? Can't hear anything.
We're waiting for him.
All right, guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Is there anybody can
Yes,
that can hear?
I can hear you.
All right.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Can hear you.
Okay. All right, please. Sorry about that. Let's just continue so we can meet up with time. Okay. So back to function parameters. So let's assume that we have this source code. So I'm just gonna you know write down some source code here. Uh, already just understand what that does. Okay. So without wasting time, let me just. So let's assume that I have a number here called num1 equals to 10, and I have let's say num. So I'm just um, fixing this value, right? So I'm not getting it from the user input. And something like that.
This network is so bad, though.
Una buy Starlink for Mr. Basu.
Hey, you need a move. This class network is so bad, like, for
All right. So, I think Mr. Solomon, I think you're the host, and okay, so I think that has been sent back to me. All right. So, basically, let's continue. I don't know why network just keeps kicking me out. All right. So let's print multiplication. Okay, let's print multiplication. Just copy this man and just replace this man. Right. Okay. So this is a very simple source code, which I believe you guys are seeing my screen. Let me just confirm that. Right. I believe you guys are seeing my screen. Okay, so this is a very simple source code. Okay, now basically does what carry out some simple mathematics, right? Some simple numerical operations, simple arithmetic.
That's your screen again.
Yay. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Are you guys seeing the screen now?
It's blank. Yes, it's appeared now.
Yes,
You
yes,
can
yes,
see
yes.
it.
All right. Okay, so this is a a very simple arithmetic operation that does that carry out addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And this looks simple, right? This looks straightforward and very very wonderful. Okay, but then of course, if I run this code, we already know what will happen. We already know that this man here will give us 15, and this man here will show us 5, and this man here will show us I think that should be 50. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that should be 50. So I believe you guys already know that. Okay, but then so I don't have to to be switching screens.
There is a typo error. There is a typo error in multiplication. No,
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. True. Yes. So that and that should be num one times num two. Thank you very much for that wonderful observation. I don't know who saw that, but thank you very much. All right. So if I should execute this, okay, we are already familiar with what will actually happen, right? But then, if this was the case, then it would have been fantastic, right? But then, what happens in situation where we have other existing source code, right? Let's say down the line, let's just assume that down this script down the line, I have maybe some print function here, some print function say hello there, all right, and let's say I also have some x being equals to, let's say, x being equals to 70, and also have like y being equals to maybe 8, maybe 90, right, and then I have some multiple source code down there, and then along the line with what we have to do what to carry out addition again, right? But it's around with a different set of value. Let's say with x and y. So what happens? We have to do what to copy this source code again. This whole mathematics of what of num one plus num two again, right? And then edit it Oh my god. And then do what? Editing with what? With X and Y. So basically you have to copy that and replace num1 and num2 with X and Y, which in actual real world project, it's difficult to do what to maintain the source code, right? Let's assume that there is a bug in your addition. You have to do what? You have to manually go through your entire source code where you have that calculation and do what and edit it across your entire source code, which is pretty very very difficult. So in this situation, what do? We want to create a function which we've already done, but then we want our function to collect this value. So we want a situation where if I should invoke the addition function, right, I should be able to pass the values to that function, and that function should carry out this calculation and give me back what my result, such that if I should go back again, if there's a problem, I can just simply go to the function source code and do what and edit whatever the case may be without doing what without necessarily worrying about where I invoked it or the values that were passed to that particular function. So that is the decision that we intend to do what to solve with our function. So let's see how that can be done with parameters, because that is the only way that function can do what can collect values, right? That's the only way that your function can collect values. So let's do what? Let's go ahead and let's see how that can work. So for the purpose of those that want to see what will happen if this happens, so let's just execute this code and so everybody can see what will happen if that code was to be fired, or should I say executed. So I'll just switch this man to our to the execution screen, so
I
we
check
see
your
what will
print
happen.
function. Print function.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Okay. You see, this is one thing about um um using this particular editor. It doesn't flag, it just stays there. Thank you very much for that observation again. Okay, please, I would not recommend this this particular editor, right? But let's just manage it for this particular class. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's save this, and this should take us straight to what our execution screen. For the purpose of just showing us what that would show if that was to be executed. So this is basically what it will show if that was to be executed. So this is what happened. So it shows us 15 and 15, 5 and what and 50, which is basically the result of from that operations that we did. Okay. So but then, like I said, if there was a problem with your addition source code, what happens is that you basically need to go through all your entire source code where you have addition, okay, where you have addition and change that, or probably should I say fix the issue, okay. And I'm using addition. It looks simple, but trust me, in situation where you have more complex equation or more complex situation, it's very very difficult doing what to locate all the possible places that you use that source code, right? So the whole point of what is to make sure that your source code is grouped, that if there's any problem you can handle it without worrying about what the data itself that was added, right? So here it looks simple because it just num1 plus num2, right? But but in situation where it was more than just plus, right? Maybe there was actual, let's assume that let's assume, okay, that we have a function that carry out authentication, and then for some reason the users are not being authenticated, right? You have to not worry about the user, but then you have to worry about the code that handles that user authentication. So the problem is not really the user, but then the source code that handles that whole process. So here is just this plus, right? Which you can actually come here and change, which is simple. But when you proceed or when you write complex instruction where the value is not really the problem, but then the code that handles that value is the problem. Then at that case, you see that that you have multiple places to do what to fix that source code, right? So let's see how this can be handled with parameters. So with parameters, you do what you see the same thing with function, right? So you see the same thing with creating your function. The only problem, or should I say, the only difference is that when you introduce parameters, right? what happens is that your function parentheses now takes in those parameters. So this is basically where your parameter stays. So here I'll call it optional. I'll call it optional parameter. So this is basically where all your parameters stays inside, right? So within your function creation, that bracket is where you tell Python that this function will collect value, and this value may or may not be used within what this function. But the whole point is that this particular function is a must, because the moment you declare that this function must collect parameter, it means that anytime you want to use that function, you must give that function what a value. That's basically one thing about parameters. Once it's been declared, anytime you want to use that function, you must do what? You must give that value for that particular parameters. So you may be wondering, how do we now write these parameters? Do we write it as this? No. Your parameters are basically what your variables. It could be any name of your choice, right? It could be any name of your choice. So in my case here, I could simply just say A, comma B, comma C. So it simply means that A, B, C are my parameters, right? And I'm simply saying that let this function have three parameters, where the first one is what is A, and second one is what is B, and second one is what is C, right? It doesn't mean that A, B, C are the values, right? It simply means that A, B, C is the location or is the placeholder where values will come into the function, right? Please, it does not mean that ABC is the value that is coming into the function. It simply means that ABC is the placeholder that will represent the value that will come in during function invocation. This value only comes in when you want to use the function. So during function creation, we only provide the space for that value. The value comes in during function invocation, right? So let's go and see how we can invoke functions that have parameters. So down here is still the same thing that we did with the other one. So I'll copy this man down here. So it's still the function name. The difference is that this time around you do what you put the parameters, right? So if there was parameter, what you do what you simply provide the value for those parameters, right? So in this case, where I say val1 and val2 and val2 and val3, so here val1, val2, val3 are the actual value that we are sending into the function, where A represent what? Value 1, and B represent what? Value 2, and C represent what? Value 3, right? So when we now reference A within our function body, we are simply referencing what? Value 1, and so on and so forth. That's basically how function parameter works and how we use them. Okay, so let's go back and let's alter this our source code such that if there's a problem somewhere, we can simply fix it without worrying about the value. Okay, so what I want to do is I would remove this addition. Basically, okay, let's just start from here. So I'll remove this man, and I'll call this man. I'll simply create a function, and I'll call this function addition function. So here, remember, with function, how do you create a function? We simply use the keyword def, right? So I'll come here, I'll say def, and I'll call this addition, and then within here I will provide my parameter. So I'm simply saying that anytime I want someone to use this function, I want it to do was to provide two values known as what? A and B. That's basically what the parameter there means. Okay, so A comma B, right? And then followed by what? Followed by my parentheses. And then within this function, if I reference A, I'm simply referencing the value that will be given as A, or the value that will be given as what? As B, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that A and B are the value. It simply means that A and B are representing those values, right? And those values are going to be sent in during Python function invocation or function calling. Okay, so now when constructing my function body, I'm going to construct it with the mindset that when this function is being called, that value will be given. Okay, so here I could just simply say result equals to what? A plus B, right? And then I simply just say print result. Okay, and that's that. I can simply just start doing using my function. So in this case, what do I do? Instead of doing this, right? And probably if I have some other places that I may have used this addition source code, it means that I have to simply go and do what and copy them or edit them or remove them, right? But in our case, we just have this just one place. Okay, so I'll remove this and do what and simply invoke my or call my function. So in this case, I call it as addition, right? As addition, and then close that, right? Now, if I should execute this code should do what? This code should show an error. Why? It's because remember when we created that function, we specifically said that function takes in two values. It doesn't matter what value it is, but that function expect two values. So let's go ahead and just execute and see the error that it shows, so that when we come across this error, we simply know what is the possible cause. Okay, so let's go back here and let's execute. So as usual, I'll click on run and I click on run module. And of course, you have to save this. And and let me just switch my screen so you could see the execution screen. Okay. So switch this again. So we have this error. So this is the error that we have there, right? So it says that this function called addition is missing two required words positional.
Can't see the screen.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you guys.
your screen went off, but it's back now. It's back.
Okay, okay. So I think that may have been when I switched. So sorry about that. All right. So if you see the error that we have there, right? It said that this function called addition is missing two positional arguments A and B, right? So it simply means that function addition, when it was created, it was being stated that this function must collect two values, all right? And the first value is what is A, and the other one is what is B. But then when we now used it, we never gave it what a value. So that is what is causing that error there. So let's go back and let's pass in the value. Okay. So if I go back again and let me switch this to my source code. If you come back again and give this man a value, okay, here I'll come here, I'll say 10 and call this what 20. Okay. And then if I should run this again, of course, this should now show us what the appropriate source code or the appropriate result rather. Okay, so I'll just switch again. Switch again. We should see what happened. Okay, switch. Please just bear with me for this particular class, and we will not have this situation again. All right, so we have our 30s now. We have our 30 there. So that basically came from what? It came from our function, right? That mandate came from our function. But this other error here is because we've deleted, we cleared that variable that we used earlier, num1 and num2. And remember, we have other source code that still use num1 and num2, which we've removed. So that is that is where this error is coming from, right? So this is the result from our function invocation. Okay, so now that makes it now easier for us to simply use that addition function over and over and over again with different value, right? But then we have one single source code. And then if there's a problem with the source code, we simply go to the function and fix the source code without worrying about what the values that was sent into the function. Okay, so that is the beauty of parameters. So let's go back and let's comment on the other ones also. We can clear out that particular error. So going back to our source code itself, okay, we could see that this is where that man is coming from. So this is the man that is causing that problem. Remember, we had num1 and num2 at some point, but then we removed it, right? We removed it. So that is why this man is still causing errors, right? So if I should remove this man out, and that should work just fine. Okay. So now the good thing now is that I can use my addition function at anywhere in my source code, right, with different values. Now I can use that same logic or that same source code, but then with a different value, let's say 50 and let's say 100, right? And nothing would what happens, right? The source code will still work the same, but then for different values. Okay. So if I should now execute again, remember once you do any changes, you must do what you must save again. So if I save again and execute and then switch my screen again, so we see that that we have the expected value there. So we have the 30 for the
So can't hear you.
I guess it's no like it's back again.
all right. So I'm not sure if you guys heard me right. Is there any question pertaining to parameters? Any question?
We didn't get to
Yeah,
see what you're trying to show after sharing your screen. It went off.
Oh, so let me show us the let me show us the execution screen. Yeah, right. Execution screen back. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Let's
Uh,
that there it is. So that is the execution screen. Okay, that's basically what happened. Um, where you have your functions being set up with variables, or sorry, with parameters, it simply means that you can reuse that function as many times as possible, right? And then for what for multiple values, That way you don't have to worry about if the core source code for that particular for that particular logic is correct or not. Okay, so you simply have it at one point and then you just reuse it over and over again. And if there's a problem, you simply go back to your function and do and fix it there, right? Because the problem is would likely never be the value, right? So but if there's any problem in the logic, of course, that logic lives in your function, right? So instead of having that logic scattered everywhere, it just stays within your function. And then what you just simply have room for what for values to come in, and then you work with those values and send out the appropriate result. Okay, so that's basically what we've done there, and that is just the importance of parameters, right? So the whole point of parameters is what is to create room where values can be sent into your function. So remember, I said that by default, your function will just execute and do what and terminate.
not
Nothing goes in and nothing comes out, right? But with parameters, values can be sent into the function. Is that okay? Question? Question?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
God,
Yeah. Please go ahead and ask the question. Yeah.
okay. In when you are printing, you put print results, but
Okay.
you didn't put the results in this thing in quotes.
The result, yeah, and that's because the result there is a variable name. So if you remember when we talk about variable, I said that we cannot put variable name in quote. The moment to do that, then it's just used as a string. But variable names are not just strings, they're what they are labeled to your container, that hold values, right? So as such, we cannot quote variable names.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Fidelis, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I want to know if can we use a function as another function parameter?
If we can use a function as another function parameter. Very
Yes.
interesting question. Yes, that happens. Yes, there's a function that can call a function, right? And those functions are we typically call the kind of function recursive function, right? A function that calls itself, or probably another function, right? Yes, your function parameters can be any data type. Remember, function itself is also a data type. Okay, so your parameters can be a function, right? So what happens is that it will execute that function and then get the value and then use it in your own function. Okay, so let me show us a typical example of what I mean. Okay, so let's do that. So like I said, that in programming we should always be curious. So we try things out and we see for ourselves. Okay, so let's go back and let's just try that out what Mr. Fidelis just asked, right? If you could use a function as a parameter. Hold on, let me see. All right, so I believe you guys are seeing my screen now. Okay, question. Does someone wanted asking question? All right, so let's go ahead and let's use function as function, or should I say function as a parameter. Okay, so I'll just create a very simple function here, right? Okay, I'll create a very simple function here, and this function probably we also use this code sample and talk about the next topic that we have in mind, which is function return values. Okay, so let's create a function here. Here, this function, I'll call this function say name, or probably yeah, say name if you call it anyhow. So say name, and this say name takes in nothing for now. Basically, I'll just say print, and I'll just print Fidelis. Fidelis ask the question, right? And then what happens is that I'll simply just use this function here as a parameter for this function here. Okay, so let's go back and let's see that. This will probably throw an error because this man is simply adding two things. Okay, yeah, it's simply adding A and B, and we are printing a string. So when we try to add that string and number, so this man here will try an error. But let us for the purpose of courtesy, or probably what we could do is we could just come here and do what and add a new parameter called C. Right? So it means that that if I want to use that function, I have to give what three parameters, right? So I'll comment on this one out, and then let's work with the other one. So I'll comment on this one as well. Let's work with just this one. Okay, so how do we do that? So for my parameter C, I'll do what? I'll simply give it that function called say name, and I'll invoke it, right? So I'll invoke it. So remember, the first parameter here is what is 10, and then the second one is what is 20, and then this last one is what is a function called say name, right? And then do what? I'll invoke it, right? So I'm invoking it so that I can get the value. So I'm basically saying let Python do what? Execute this function, and then if there's a value there, get the value, and that value would be what? Would be a value for what? For my parameter what? C. Okay, so let's go back and let's execute. So this will run just fine, right? So this will execute just fine, and why is because we haven't used this C anywhere within our source code yet. Okay, so but we'll come back and we use it. Okay, so let's run this now and let's see how it goes. So if I save this as usual, I hate this editor. Okay, and then it takes us to this man. All right, so if I should go back and switch to our screen, let's see if we notice what just happened. Okay, so let's share this other one, and there you go. All right, so I believe that we are seeing this. So what do we see? We see Fidelis, and then we see 30, right?
Oh, yes.
All right, but then you may also wonder why are we seeing Fidelis when we naturally use that function? All right, when we naturally, because remember this Fidelis, right, was inside a function called same name, right? Now what happens is that why is Fidelis now coming first before 30, right? That's because this function was executed and used as your third parameter, right? So it means that function executed first before our addition function itself. So that is why this man comes first, and then the result from addition now comes second. Do you understand? Do we understand?
Please come
All
again.
right.
I don't understand.
Okay. All right. So okay, let's see our source code again. Then we come back. I wish I could just put these things side by side. But let's look at our source code again. So we come back and look at that result. So that should make sense to us. Okay. So let me just share back. Let me share our source code again. Sorry. Sorry. We have to be switching screens like this. Okay. So we have these two functions here, right? We have these two functions here, right? So the first one is what is called say name, and that basically just prints fidelis, right? Yeah. And then the other one is what is addition, that basically just say collects three values, A, B, and C, and do what, add A, B, and C, and prints that result. But we haven't actually used C, right? And then what happens? The only function that we invoked was this addition function, which we gave it what, the first value and the second value. But the third value was another function. So we had to invoke another function so that we can get a value for that third parameter, right? So what happens? We now pass this function into this other function called addition, and then we invoked it. So now that now becomes what, that now becomes our third parameter, right? But then if I should execute my source code now, remember what will happen? This function here called addition will execute, right? But then in order for this addition to execute fully, this man needs to execute first, because this man, we need to get the value from that man, because Python thinks that man needs to execute and give us a value, which that value is what we will use as parameter 3 before doing what find before we do what we finally do what proceed to execute the rest of our addition function. That is why during the result we saw this man first before what before now seeing the result of what of our 10 plus 20, right? So because was this function here was executed first, right? And then we now finally proceed with our source code within the addition function. That is why if I go back again to our source code again, sorry, to our execution page, we now see that this man comes first fidelis, and then the 39 comes last. That's because the third argument of the additional function was a function called sayname, which needed to be executed in order to use it as a value for the third argument before finally proceeding to executing the addition function. Does that make sense? Do we understand? Do we understand?
Yes, boss. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that's basically how we can use functions as as a value for another function. Okay, so it works perfectly fine. It works perfectly fine. But then there's one thing I want to point out again, because function can be very, very funny at times. Function can be very, very funny at times. Okay, so let me just point that out, and then that should be all for this particular class. And yes, when we meet, we will pick up with try and with exception handling, and then we add what we have for that particular class. Okay, so because I don't intend to continue using this editor. It's really frustrating, right? So, but funny enough, this was my favorite editor. Probably that was when I started programming newly. So this editor was my favorite. It took me some time before I could migrate to VS Code, but after I arrived at VS Code, this man now becomes my worst my worst editor. And it's just the way how it's just the way how life works. Okay, so let's go back to our source code and let's see. So going back to our source code. Okay. All right. So what I want to point out here is that I want to come down up here and I want to print the value of C, right? So I come here and say C, and then I want to print this value of C, right? So C there. All right. So basically it means that I want to show us what value did this function give to C. right? So remember that this function here, right, is a third value that needed to be invoked, right? So that we can know what we can extract a value from that function, and that value can now be used as uh, our third value. So now let's print that value. Let's see what that value was, right? So that's basically what I'm doing here, right? So this line here is just so that what is just so that we see the value of what of C. Okay. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and do what and execute this code again so we can see the value of C. Okay, so if I do this again, if I run this again, as usual, I have to save and come back again. So let me just click this so that this can come up a little bit. Okay, so if I do this again and run this. All right, so let me switch so we can see the result that we are having here. Okay, let's see. So this is our result that we have for that execution. So we have our fidelis. Remember, this happened because what? Because we invoked that function, and that function says print fidelis. So that's why we're having that fidelis, right? And then after that, we do what we proceed to the to our addition function itself. And then what do we have here? We say that the value of C is what? Is none. And then we now have 30 as what as the value of our result. And you'll be wondering, why are we having none as the value of C? So now that takes us to what to function return statement. Okay, so let's go back and so we can talk about it proper. So in going back again, switch to our source code again. Sorry guys, really sorry. All right, so let's go back to our source code. So you can say that the value of this C here is what is none, like from what we saw in our response, that C is giving us what is giving us none. So it means that this function that we invoked only printed uh, fidelis, but then no value was given, no value was returned from that function, right? That's basically how function behaves. Remember, I said that by default, your function is meant to do what? To execute and terminate within itself. Meaning that what that by default, it shouldn't take anything and it shouldn't return anything. So because we've changed that with what with parameter, it now means that function can take thing, but then we still have that default behavior of what of not sending out anything, and that default behavior can also be altered. The same way we alter the default behavior of what of sending in values, we can also change that behavior of what of not sending out values. Right? So how do we do that? So by default, your function will not send out anything. That is why what the value of C here is what is none. Right? Your function would not return anything. That is why the value of C is what is none. It means that if you pass your function as a value to a variable, you have none because nothing is returned from your function by default. So how do we change that behavior? So to change that behavior it's really simple, right? It's really simple because in some cases you want your function to do what, to process something, and then at the end of it or do what, send out a value, right, by default, or in most cases you want your function to do what, to process a particular value and then do what, and then send out a particular result. Okay, so to achieve that you simply use the keyword called return. So this is the keyword called return. It's optional, so you can choose to put it. So the same way your parameters is optional, this one here is also optional. Okay, so the return statement is basically used to tell Python that at the end of this function execution, I want to send out this value. So return underscore and then what value. Now whatever value you attach here is basically what is basically what will be sent out to what to the rest of your code. Right now, without this return keyword, your function will return none by default. It means that function did not send out any value. Probably it might have taken up it may have gotten some values and process it, but then without this return statement or this return keyword, nothing will leave that function, right? Everything will process and then do what, stay in that function, right? So, but with the help of this return keyword, a value can be sent out of that particular function. And of course, this value can be of any data type, right? It can be of any data type. And then once you introduce this special keyword into your function body, it simply means that when pattern comes across that keyword, it assumes that is the end of your function body. So it's always recommended that you use your return statement at the end of your function body. Okay, or use it at the end of your function body, or when you are done with everything, and you're ready to send out a value, you do what you introduce the return statement. Okay, so let's come back again to our say name. So remember, right now, say name is not returning anything, right? Nothing is coming inside and nothing is going outside, right? Because remember, this function takes nothing, so it means that function is not accepting any value, and since there's no return keyword, this function is not also sending out any value, right? So now let's do what? Let's alter that behavior. So I can simply come in and say return, and then use return, and then whatever value I specify here now becomes the value that should leave that function. It means that if I should invoke this function, and then this function finish everything at the end of this function lifespan, that this is the value that should leave this function, right? So if I come here and say return, let's say 100, 100 now becomes the only value that will leave this function at the end of that function execution, right? So now if I should do that and then run this code again, our value of C should now be 100, because what? Because we've simply said that this function here should return 100. That's basically after execution. This is the value that we want to do, what to send out of that function. Okay, so of course this value can be any data type, and can be of any class, right? So it's your choice as the developer to do what, to now decide which value is leaving this function and which value is not leaving this function, right? So, but that can be done with the return keyword, right? With the return keyword. Without this keyword, nothing will leave this function, right? Without that keyword, nothing will leave this function. So let's do that. Let's save and let's do what, and let's execute, right? So I save again, and let's go ahead and let's execute this man. So let me just switch this up again so you can see what is happening. All right, so if I go back again, okay, okay. So Anthony, I'm coming. We will attend to your question. All right, so let's switch again and let's go back to our execution page, and we do what we have that C is now 100. So you can see that the value of that function, or the value that was returned from that function, or that was sent out of that function, is now 100, and now 100 is now what is now used as our third placeholder for the addition function, right? So now remember, without that return statement, nothing leaves your function. So in situation where you intend to process something and send out something, right? Then you need the return keyword. Okay. All right, so let's take questions and then we wrap it up. Okay, so I think someone's hand was up. Mr. Anthony Ekong, your hand is up, or your hand was up. Sorry about that.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Please, I want to ask a question.
Okay.
The function, can it take up to, okay, because before you enter this function, before you
Okay.
defined this last function, you
All right, let me
cleaned
switch.
you cleaned up three variables. That was addition, multiplication, and subtraction. So
Okay.
can you define a function using three variables? Like, okay, I want this function, when I input 1 and 2, I want you to multiply it, add it, subtract it. So
Okay.
that's my question. Is it possible?
Yes, of course. Very, very, very possible, right? So let's probably probably let's just change this to what? Let's change this to calculation, right? Right now, right? So let's change it to calculation, yeah? And then this man will take in AB, right? So I'll take this man off for now, and then I can just simply just say, once I call on this man, right? I want to simply do the addition, and here I can call this the addition. Addition equals to this, right? I'll call this addition or add rather, and replace this. And I can do that again with more with subtraction. So I'll call this sub and just simply just say a minus b and just simply call it subtraction equals that and simply call it sub. Okay. Of course, you can do that for the rest, right? So if I should come here and do what and execute this man here, so invoke this man here and replace this man, so remove this and execute this now. Of course, that should work just fine. So if I do this now, let me just switch this again so we see. So I switch this to switch my screen. But all right. I don't know if I'm seeing this now. All right, so that's basically what happens. Okay, that's basically what happens. So your function can basically do anything as far as you as the developers have chosen that this function should do this and this and this and this. Of course, that function can do this, that, and that. But then remember, without parameters, nothing can go into that function, and without return statement, nothing can leave that function. Is that okay? Is that okay, Mr. Anthony?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's okay.
All right. Any other question? Any other question before we call it a night? Any other question? Please, we will not use this fantastic editor again, please. Right. So this was just specific. This was meant to let us know that that Python have a built-in editor, right? That came alongside your Python installation. But I was thinking that it would be a very straightforward, interesting class. But then I may have, shall I say, it may have skipped my head how frustrating this editor can be, right? But then we still use it, right?
Can I?
Regardless, use it. Sorry, is there a
Hello.
question? Yes.
No, no question actually. I was having a bit of a challenge joining the class early today, so I kind of joined late. I
Okay.
met you on I met you on function. I just
Okay.
wanted you to like just give me a rundown. Not that you do the class again, just a rundown of the topics covered today. So I've seen function already. I the other one that have been covered before I joined. So
No,
I know
no, we
I
we,
can
we
just pull
basically
up the yeah.
oh, okay. So we basically just covered functions. Okay, we covered just functions, and up there is just basically just theory of basically of what function is. Okay, and how to declare it and how to invoke it, and I think that's just all. Right. So we focus specifically on functions, and then we said that that function have two faces, right? So the first face, oh, that thing sounds like the same thing, face. All right, all right. So the first step, let's use step. The first step is what is function creation, and the other step is what is function invocation, right? So if you do step one without step two, nothing happens, right? Your function will not get fired, and your source code will not get executed, right? So in order to get your function to work properly, you must accomplish both steps, right? So after your creation, you must do what? You must invoke. And you invoke where you want to do what to execute those instructions. Okay. That's basically what function is. Okay, and it's being declared with this special keyword called def. So that def there is short for definition, right? So def and then followed by what your function name, followed by your parentheses, and optional parameter there, and then your colon, then your function body, and also optional return statement. That is if you want to send something out, which in most cases you always want to do what to send something out of your function. There's no point of doing what of pressing something and then not sending something out. Okay, except that they say that's what you want. All right, except that's what you want. But then in most cases, you always want to do what to send something out. Okay, is that okay? So when next we meet, we look at errors and
Yes,
then okay. All right. So when next we meet, we look at exception handling. That shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. It's a very straightforward topic. It's a very straightforward concept. And then we continue with whatever we have for the next class. Any question pertaining to function? You guys did a fantastic job in the task that you guys just completed. Very fantastic job, right? Most of us would have had 100. Most of us. But you guys just form hands. You guys submitted late, right? And consequences of submitting late is that you can't just go above cutoff mark. Most of us are, most of us that have 80 on the dot, you will have 100. But the law is the law. You can't just, the law is law. You can't, want to submit after deadline, you can't go above cutoff mark. But trust me, you guys did fantastic job, right? You guys did a very fantastic job. Miss Anthony, your hand is up. You have a question?
Sorry, sir. I wanted to ask something concerning the tax. Okay.
Okay.
Um. It is that for and one. The control, the last topic we did. So I
Okay.
wanted to ask. Now you gave us a while, but when I applied it to my code, okay, that's why I said concerning the tax. Okay, secret number. Let me say somebody
Okay.
guessed my secret number and it stopped at the third. Now if I use a 4, it will keep rolling over till the range. Let me say I gave a range of 5 and the person guessed at the third one and he got it.
Okay.
But it will still keep rolling over till it reaches the fifth. So I wanted to ask, which do we use, for or while? And if we are using while, how do we stop? How do we break it there?
All right. 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 Did we do loop keywords? Did we cover anything like loop keywords? Did we do anything pertaining to loop keywords? Did we?
No, we
We did
didn't do
not.
keyword. We didn't.
Can you guys
we
give
have not learned that.
can
We
you
did
guys
not do
give
it, sir.
Okay, can you guys give me 5 minutes of your time? Let me just run us on that particular topic, and then we
All
close.
right, sir. All right.
Please, just 5 minutes of your time, please, please. All right, let's look at loop keyword. For some reason, I thought that we covered loop keyword. For some reason, okay, let's look at loop keyword. Please, just 5 minutes of your time. I won't take more than that, and then we wrap it up for today's class. So let's look at loop keywords. Keywords. Right. Okay. So,
I ask question for class. They want to dress am. Jesus, I am a big boy.
all right, let's where are we? Okay, let's comment on this man, because this man is the only man that will execute. All right. Okay, loop keyword. So what are loop keywords? So these are special keywords that you use within your loops. So loop loop keywords are special keywords that's you use within your loops. Right? So it means that this keyword only have effect if you use them inside loops, right? So outside of loops, they have no effect, right? And they are break and continue. So those are the only two loop keyword that we have: break and continue. Okay. So now, what does these two keyword do? Right? From their name, break. What does this man do? This man terminates your loop, terminates your loops, your loop immediately, immediately, immediately. That's basically what the break does, right? So once Python come across the break keyword in your loop, it terminates that loop instantly, right? Even if that loop have not reached the final destination, probably that loop has not continued to the last execution. But once it comes across the break keyword, it terminates that loop instantly. But that's basically what the break does. So let's see how this man works in actual example. Okay. So break, put the comments here. Okay. So let's use for loop. So let's say I have a for loop and I says for I in range of let's say 5, right? Of 5. And then here simply just say print hello, right? So you know that if I execute this code, hello would show 5 times, right? if I should come here and execute this code, this man should show 5 times hello. Okay, so if I do that, let's see. Let me just close this out. All right, so let's run this again. And we have hello 5 times. So if I should take you back to the execution screen. All right, so we have our hello the file. It start from beginning all the way to the end. But then when we introduce these special keywords like the break, what happens? It alters this normal flow of how your loop works, right? That's what those keyword does. They alter the normal flow of your loop execution. So like the break. So what happens is that once the loop comes across break, it terminates. Okay, so let's go back again and let's insert break inside and see what happens. So let's go back again. Where are we? Let me just switch this again. Let's go back to our source code. Please, we are almost done with loops, like with those keywords. Right? They are pretty simple. All right. So let's assume that I come here and then just before we have our print, or maybe let's say maybe after we have our print, right? I just simply come here and just say break, right? So the break just have to stay in this keyword just have to exist somewhere inside your loop. What happens? So without even executing this code, I believe that most of us have guessed that this loop will only run one time. Why? So when you execute this code, what happens? This will show print hello, but because after that execution, what do we see? We now have break. It means terminate that loop there. Don't worry about, just leave the rest. Like leave the second loop, the third loop, the full and the feed. Just any day. That's basically what the break does. So now if I should execute this code, what should I see? I should only see hello one time, and that ends that loop, right? So let's go back and let's execute this and let's see. So let me execute this so we see. Right, so I'll execute this. Come here, run, and do this. And then we have hello just one time. Let me just switch so we see. We have hello just one time. Okay, where are we? Share. All right, so so you can see that we have just hello, a single hello, and that is the end of that loop. That's basically what break does, right? So once Python comes across that keyword in your execution, it just terminates that loop there, right? It just terminates that loop there. So in that case of that project, right, that guessing project where someone have to keep guessing. Please, this keyword works for both for loop and while loop, please. All right, so it works for both for loop and while loop. Okay, so in that situation where if someone gets that number, you want to end that loop there, right, without necessarily going forward again. Break is what is the keyword that you would intend to use there. Yes, I think I saw it in our source code. We not have it, right? But then when I saw it repeatedly, I kind of felt that probably that we've not talked about loop keyword, so I just overlooked it. Okay, but then if we had done loop keyword, uh, and what about we've gone back and reduce some tax, right? So, but then it's fine, right? It's fine. You guys still did a fantastic job. Okay, so now let's go back to our source code and let's continue. Okay. Let's go back to our source code and let's continue. All right. So going back to our source code, right? So in actual sense, right, you would not want to just put your break like that, your cut and put there, right? Because what happened? It will just terminate. This loop will just run one time and one and execute, right? So in most cases, probably let's assume that like that this was let's say let's use let's use the PUK number, right? That and if you guys remember that lesson that I said in our previous class, when that during that time where SIM card was a thing, right? And then back then we used to set this thing called PUK. I can't remember what this thing stands for, but then it somehow locks your SIM card, right? And then if you put in your pin after like third incorrect time, it blocks it locks your SIM card, right? So let's see how you can replicate that. Well, while introducing the break and the continue keywords there, right? So let's see how we can implement this POC functionality, right? So we have 3 times where someone needs to do what needs to test or try to put their POC pin. Okay, I think yeah. So here I'll have a character here called pin, and let's assume that this person pin is what is 0000, assuming, right? So what I can do is that already and I know that that this POC should do what should only look for what for 3 times, right? So you can only guess it 3 times. After that, I want to do what I want to show you SIM card block, right? So what I can do is I can simply come here and say for I in range of 3, because that's the only number of times that you intend to do what to try, right? And then what I can do is that I can simply come and say enter user pin. So user underscore pin. So this is where you type in your pin, right? And then I can just simply say int, and then I'll say input, and then I'll say enter your POC, right? Enter your PUK. All right. And then so let's just try this out and let's see what happens. So we flow up this code one line by line. Okay, so let me just switch and show you guys see what is happening. Sorry. Switch. All right, so enter your POC, and then here I can type in some random numbers, right? And nothing really happens, right? But then after the 3rd time, it should do what? It should just block your SIM card, right? So that is the whole point. But right now, we haven't done that logic. So let's go back and let's do that logic. But then, what if someone still gets it at the first trial, right? We don't want to keep repeating, right? We don't want to keep repeating. So let's just go back and let's just put that logic together so we can wrap it up for today's class, please. Please, I sincerely apologize for taking you guys' time. Please. All right. I really thought that I did cover that loop keyword. Okay. So I say here, let's cover and let's see. So here I could just simply say that if user pin, right? If user pin, that basically if the pin that you've typed, right, is the same as the pin that we have, right? So in that case, simply just break, because if
Yes, sir. I can't hear you anymore. Can't hear you, sir. Or is it my network? Can't hear you.
I was doing everything give you.
I
All right.
guess it's network.
Can you guys hear
Is
me?
it?
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can
Yes,
you
Yeah,
I
guys
we
see
hear
my
can
you
hear
now.
screen?
you.
Yes, can hear
All
you.
right. So here I could just say pin yeah, pin correct. It's pin correct. Right. That this just happens before what? Before I terminate. Okay. So now let's go back and let's do what? And let's but then if that doesn't happen, I simply want to tell you that this is what prints incorrect pin, right? Incorrect pin. Right. So what is happening here? So let's break this down, right? So this is our loop body.
No, Said, can't hear you anymore. Guess your network is bad. Can't hear you anymore, sir.
All right. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I believe you guys can hear me. I know you guys can see my screen, yeah?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes. Are we together? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I'm seeing your screen.
Yeah,
All
you.
right. So okay. So this is our what? This is our code, right? So now let's execute this code and let's see what happens, right? Let's execute this code and let's see what happens. Right. So probably by now, once you guys go back and we look at your that particular task, you guys can see where to place this special loop keywords. Okay. So going back again and then just simply share execution screen. Let me share my execution screen. Hold on. Let me just come up with something here. All right. So if I should just share this now, you guys can see my execution screen, yeah. But then if I type in a wrong number, it shows what incorrect pin. But then it shows me again what enter my POC again, right? But then if I type in again another wrong one and then enter again, what happened? It shows me what's my incorrect pin. But then if I should now finally if I should now finally if I should now finally show see, let's say type in the correct pin 0000, right? What happened? I now have pin incorrect. Now let's try getting that pin at the beginning of that loop, right? Let's see what happens. So at the beginning of this loop, let's see what happens. So let me just show you guys that. So we see what happens. All right. So at the beginning of this loop, if I should just type in a 000, the correct pin, what happens is that that loop does what, it terminates that loop instantly. So what do we see that we see pin correct and then what that loop ends automatically. So that's basically what the break keyword does. It terminates your loop instantly, right? So now you may wonder, what about the continue keyword? So the continue keyword is the opposite of your break keyword. It simply just instead of to terminate, it skips the current iteration and go to the next. Are we together? Do you have question pertaining to break before we proceed with the continue? Question pertaining to break before we continue. That's it. I don't know. Question pertaining to break before we continue. Question pertaining to break before we continue. Question. So
Yeah.
yes.
What if you put the break before the print statement?
Okay, so it will terminate that loop before showing that print. So it will terminate that execute that the entire loop. So that print will never get the chance of executing. That's what will happen. The print will never get the chance of executing because the break was made before the print. Do you understand? Do you understand, Mr. Fidelis?
Understand?
All right. Any other question? Any other question? All right, so let's go back and let's see what happens in. So the continue. So I'll just give us one simple instance here for continue, right? I'll give us one simple instance for continue. So I'll take off this break here, right? And let me show you what happens. So let's come here. Let's put some print statements here, right? So basically, let's put some. Maybe I'll put some comments here. Put some comments here. Put some comments here. All right, so let's come here and let me just put code after continue. After continue keyword. All right. That okay. So now if I should run this code, what happens? Will this man here will do what will execute, right? The two of them. So I'll get a I'll get an input field where I can type in my POC, and then what happens? This man shows code after continue, right? That's basically what will happen for 3 times. Okay. So I want you guys to see the code before and after the continue, right? So this is basically what this code looks like before I bring in the continue keyword, right? So if I type in my POC here, so let's say I type in any number at all, right? It shows code after continue keyword, right? I type in another one, code after continue keyword, and I type in another one, code after continue keyword, right? Now let's see what happens when I go back and put in continue. So if I come here now and put in continue here. Okay, let me just share my screen so you guys see that side. Okay. All right. So basically, so if I come here now and type in my continue. All right. So let's go back and let's see what will happen. All right. Okay. Before we see, let me explain what will happen. Right. So the continue keyword, what happened? It skips the current loops and go to the next loop. So what do I mean? I mean that when the continue keyword does not terminate your loop, right? It simply just abandon the rest of the execution, or it abandons the rest of the code and move to the next loop, right? So whenever Python meets continue, it doesn't execute the rest of that code again. It just skips that iteration and go to the new iteration, right? That's basically what happens with continue. So let me put it up here. Is continue, continue, continue. It skips the current iteration. That's basically what the continue does, right? So now basically, if I should run this code, what will happen? This will execute, but then after this has executed, what do we see? We now see continue. So what does that mean? It means abandon this code and whatever is left under, and do what, and go back and start a new iteration. So that it comes back here, it comes back here again, right? And then what happens again? It shows this man again. What happens? It abandons this code and go back again and starts a new one, and then it keeps doing that till it completes that loop cycle. That's basically what the continue does. Okay. So now if I should save this and run, let's go back again and let's see our source code. So let me take you to the loop, the listing page, run module. Or let me switch this again. Share and come back here. So if I should now come here and type some random number, what happens? It takes me back again. So you can see that what happens, the print after that continue never executed. That's basically what the continue does. So instead of ending that loop, it just abandons that loop and go to the next loop. That's basically what the continue does, right? And then it do that till we get to the end of this code, which is what 3 times. So what happened? That now ends that loop. That's basically what they continue do, right? So it doesn't terminate your loop, it just abandons that loop and go to the next loop, right? That's basically what continue does. Question. I think that's the end of those two keywords. Question. 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 All right. Okay. So the silence means no question. Silence means no question. Okay, that's all right, guys. So that's basically loop keywords, and I urge us that in our spare time we should do what we play around with those keywords and see how they behave. Okay, and as far as loop goes, they are actually very important in loops. We cannot do without them because like in that situation where you need to terminate the loop, but then it keeps repeating. That is where your break keyword comes in, and then institution where you need to abandon a current iteration and move to the next one. That is where the continue comes in. All right, guys. So that is that for today's class, and please do have a fantastic night rest, and I'll see you guys in our next class. Bye for now.
When is the next tax dropping, please?
It should be on your LMS on or before tomorrow. So just check this night, because after this class, I want to go and I want to go and prepare your tax and then just drop it on the LMS now. So it should be available anytime from tomorrow. In fact, as you wake up tomorrow morning, just know that there is tax. Go straight to your LMS and do what and start solving the tax, right? All right. So please have a fantastic night rest and see you guys on Wednesday.